Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. I predict that the case we are going to cover tonight is going to be one of the biggest true crime cases of 2024. There have been three huge bombshells, big twists in the case in just the last week. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. It turns out there was a secret sealed indictment that nobody knew about, and it's opened up a lot of questions. So tonight, I'm going to bring you up to date on what's been happening in the Brooks Houck murder trial or murder case. He is accused of murdering his girlfriend, Crystal Rogers, in 2015. And it's taken a long time to get to the point where now we're finally in court. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. It's Monday and we are speeding toward the holiday. I hope you have lots of fun things planned. I hope everybody enjoyed the extra live this weekend. I am planning to take off the week between Christmas and New Year's. And so I'm trying to leave you with a lot to watch, a lot of things beforehand. If you would, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you get all of those notifications. Hit the like button for this video and let's get started. Now, the case, if you're new to the case, I'm going to give you a very quick synopsis of what the case is about. Crystal Rogers, and let me go ahead and show you a picture of Crystal. I will put that up for you. Crystal Rogers lived in Bardstown, Kentucky. She had a very wealthy, successful boyfriend, Brooks Houck. They lived together and had a 2-year-old son together. And I'll show you a picture of Brooks. That's Brooks, her boyfriend, now alleged to have actually murdered her. Well, Crystal, and I'm going to use there we go. That's our new layout that we've done. So Crystal, beautiful, beautiful young woman, young mom. She was just 35 years old in 2015, had 5 kids, one of them being the 2-year-old she had with Brooks Houck. But somewhere between July 3rd and July 4th, 2015, Crystal Rogers disappeared off the face of the earth. Her car was found abandoned on the side of the Bluegrass Parkway near her home. Her keys, her purse, her cell phone were all in the car, which of course made no sense. There was a flat tire, but why would any woman alone going to walk for help, why would she leave her cell phone and her purse in the car? It didn't make sense. So, and then a year later, to add yet another twist, and let me show you his picture, her father, Tommy Ballard, was shot and killed on his own property. No, that case also still hasn't been solved. So that is, in a nutshell, what happened to Crystal Rogers and to her father, Tommy Ballard. Now, from the beginning, suspicion centered on Brooks Houck, the boyfriend, and at least for the disappearance of Crystal Rogers, if not maybe for the shooting of Tommy Ballard. So let me show you Brooks Houck again. There you go. Brooks Houck. So, but this past summer, and for years, 8 years, the case just remained pretty dormant, not a lot happening. Oh, there was a lot happening in terms of the FBI came in, there were searches, there were things that were looked at, there was evidence, there were interrogations of the people who were involved, but not in terms of an arrest until this past August, when the case finally began to break open. In August, a man named Joseph Lawson was arrested. He was a paraplegic, and his initial appearance was from a hospital bed. He actually appeared at his first hearing, a Zoom hearing, from a hospital bed, and his arrest confused everybody. Who is this guy, Joseph Lawson? What did he have to do with any of this? And we will talk about that in just a minute. That's going to be one of the bombshells you're going to learn about. But finally, in September, Brooks Houck was arrested as well. Second person arrested. So let's talk about what the 3 new developments are this week, and then I'll go into detail about them. The first was that Brooks Houck had not just 1, but 2 bad rulings. That's really over the last several weeks. This past week, there was a brand new search of a wooded area not far from Bardstown. And the third, and the place where we're going to get started tonight, is that secret indictment that got unsealed. Now, we knew about two indictments. We knew about an indictment of Joseph Lawson. He was arraigned, and let me pull that out so I can talk to you a little more directly. And okay, Joseph Lawson was actually arraigned on September 7th. And they entered for him, of course, a not guilty plea, and stated that there was a lot of discovery, 2 terabytes worth of discovery. Now, he has current charges. He is in jail awaiting trial on this. He has not been allowed out, or at least he has a bond, but he hasn't met the bond. Now, he was charged with 2 things. The first being criminal conspiracy to commit murder, and the second being tampering, destroying, mutilating, concealing, or removing physical evidence, and aiding in the commission or planning of a crime that intentionally caused the death of another person. Now, he seemed like an unlikely suspect, a paraplegic in a wheelchair. How did this even happen? But it turns out his injury came from a motorcycle accident in 2021. He was not in a wheelchair at the time Crystal disappeared. And a local newspaper wrote an article about his past and said he had a checkered past, that he had had 5 women over time accuse him of either DV or of threatening them. But even at the arraignment, there were a lot of unanswered questions. What exactly did Joseph Lawson have to do with any of this? How did law enforcement ever reach the idea that he was involved? What even caused them to think that? And why now? What made it happen now? So there had been a weird exchange at Brooks Houck's initial interrogation all the way back in 2015 about a man named Steven Lawson. More on that in a minute. We're going to actually watch that little segment from the interrogation. But that was Steven Lawson. It turns out Steven is, in fact, Joseph Lawson's dad. But it wasn't about Joseph Lawson. Steven Lawson worked for Brooks Houck and did work along with him on construction and things like that. But Joseph Lawson did not. So why was Joseph Lawson being arrested? How was he connected? And we still didn't know that, and still don't fully know that. Let me be clear on that. But we do have a little more information. So now we get into, I want to show you just real quickly, Brooks Houck's indictment. And I want you to see what it was that Brooks Houck was charged with. The first thing he was charged with on July 3rd, 2015 and or July 4th, 2015, which pretty much shows you that law enforcement doesn't know exactly what happened. They just know that it was over that time frame. In Nelson County, Kentucky, the above named defendant, acting alone or in complicity with another, committed the offense of murder by intentionally or under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to human life, wantonly causing the death of Crystal Rogers. So we knew it was Crystal Rogers, and we knew he was charged with the murder alone or in complicity. So he might have had help, is what they were saying. Count 2, same date, same place. The above named defendant, acting alone or in complicity with another, tampering with physical evidence when, believing that an official proceeding may be pending or instituted, he destroyed, mutilated, concealed, removed, or altered the physical evidence which he believed was about to be produced or used in such official proceeding with the intent to impair its verity or availability in the official proceeding. Now, it's unclear what exactly was tampered with. I mean, that could be a range of things. It could be a body, of course. It could also be bloody clothes. It could be a murder weapon. It could be different things. We just know that the tampering with physical evidence, it could also be her car and anything like that. For example, if her car was moved to a new location, that could be what they were talking about. Not a lot of details, as you can see. It's very bare bones. And I want you specifically to notice the date. I circled that in red. This indictment was signed and entered by the clerk on September 20th, 2023. So we know that the 2 indictments happened after July. Well, the arrests were in August. The arrests were in September of Joseph and then of Brooks Houck. Well, naturally, and Brooks Houck, by the way, is being held in the Nelson County Detention Center and has been ever since his arrest. Although he is not happy with that and has filed a number of motions. We'll cover that at the end rather briefly, but he clearly is very unhappy with that. Now, naturally, there has been a lot of speculation. Would Joseph Lawson turn on Brooks Houck? Was he maybe arrested first so that law enforcement could try to get him to turn and give more evidence against Brooks Houck? Was that one of the things that was being done? Maybe the pressure of being accused of being in jail, maybe that would cause him to want to help. And certainly that's possible. It's possible that it still happened. But boom, bombshell number one, enter that. It turns out there was an earlier indictment that neither of these two, Joseph Lawson and Brooks Houck, was indicted first. Someone else was indicted before both of them, and it was Joseph's dad, Stephen. He was indicted, and that was unsealed last week. So let's take a look at the indictment of Steven Lawson. Now, I want you to notice something. I circled this again. This indictment was filed May 24th. Before Brooks Houck was indicted and before before Joseph Lawson was indicted. This was the very first one, May 24th. What was he charged with? Acting alone or in complicity with others, committed the offense of tampering with physical evidence. Now, I want you to keep that in mind. That's the only thing he's charged with here. And it's complicity, not just that he did it himself, but it was alone or in complicity with others, committed the offense of tampering with physical evidence, the same thing that was charged against Brooks Houck. Now, there was bail of $50,000 that was placed, and his arraignment was set for the 6th of July or earlier. That's a possibility if he was arrested prior to that date, but that's what it was set for. We're going to keep going through these pages of the document. I've highlighted some parts to talk to you about. So, but interestingly, on the 24th of May, this matter was sealed. It was not unsealed. It was not public, in other words. So it says this matter coming before the court and the court being sufficiently advised, it is hereby ordered the indictment issued in this matter and any corresponding paperwork shall be sealed until further order of this court or until the above listed party has been arrested and appears before this court. And there was a review to happen on July 6th. And the clerk was told, don't make any entries into KY courts. Don't put it in e-warrants. This is all under seal. And we're going to wait until there's some additional, the judge will unseal it at some point. But for right now, it's all going to be sealed. That was entered the same day, the May 24th. Now, I'll especially look at this from June 2023. So this is the 10th of June. He's now been, this is a full 6 + 10 days, 16 days after that initial indictment. And it says, it is hereby ordered upon request of the Commonwealth and the court being sufficiently advised, it is hereby ordered that the defendant's bond is hereby modified to $50,000 unsecured with the condition, which was the big difference, with the condition that the defendant maintain contact with his attorney and continued cooperation with the Commonwealth. Two huge points. The first is he already has an attorney. All he's supposed to do is maintain contact with that attorney, not establish it, not get one, just maintain contact with that attorney and continued cooperation. So the cooperation is already happening between Steven Lawson and the Commonwealth of Kentucky. It's called a Commonwealth, but that's already ongoing. He's already cooperating with them. And part of what's supposed to happen by this order, and his bond is made unsecured, is that he's to have continued cooperation. So what that means is by June 10th, before Joseph Lawson or Brooks Houck were indicted, Steven Lawson was already cooperating with the state of Kentucky, with the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And he already had an attorney. That was entered on June 12th. And you'll see here a series of things. They had an arraignment for July 6th, but they continued that to August 17th. And then that was continued to October 19th. And then that was continued to November 16th. And then it was continued to December 9th, and finally continued to December 21st, still to come at 9 a.m., because defendant is incarcerated in Indiana. So Steven Lawson is apparently in jail in Indiana. I don't know for what. We'll have to figure that out. But it says file can be unsealed. So finally, at last, this was entered and the file was unsealed and we were allowed to see it. But do you see what a bombshell that is? What that means is it wasn't that law enforcement thought Joseph Lawson did something and they arrested him and he was turning on Brooks Houck. No, it all started apparently with Stephen. This suggests he was the very first one and he was cooperating. So what does that mean exactly? Does that mean that Stephen turned on his son, Joseph? Is that what happened? Did Stephen provide the information that led to the arrest of both his son, Joseph, and of Brooks Houck? We don't know. We have a ton left to learn about, but this sure raised a lot of questions about how exactly law enforcement got to Joseph and Brooks Houck. It suggests they got to the two of them through Steven Lawson. Now, one huge question, how did they get to Steven Lawson? We don't know exactly, but we do have some really interesting information. Now, I also want to show you that is the file that is related to the murder charge, the tampering with evidence charge. But look at this file. This is something new. This was criminal conspiracy to commit murder, again, for Steven Eugene Lawson. And it's, again, the July 3rd, July 4th, agreed to aid one or more persons in the planning or commission of the crime or an attempt or solicitation to commit the crime when he and or a co-conspirator intentionally caused the death of another. But look, when that was filed, December 6th. So what happened there? One thing we can tell is that back in May, they were not charging Steven Lawson with murder. They weren't charging him with criminal conspiracy to commit murder. They were charging him with tampering with evidence. Now, on December 6th, they have added a charge against Steven Lawson. And this one says it's for $500,000, the bond, cash only, plus conditions. Wow. So that there's something that's happened. Was it all part of the plan? Is this part of the deal with Stephen? We don't know, but this is obviously a far more serious charge than the tampering with evidence charge was. This is actually a charge, conspiracy to murder. And so we see down here that conspiracy to commit murder is continued to 12/21, the same as the other count at 9 a.m., again, because the defendant is incarcerated in Indiana. And again, the file can be unsealed. Just huge questions are raised here. What we can see is that Steven Lawson is, in the state's mind, clearly involved right down in the middle of this. And we don't really know exactly how, but he seems to be where they started. So who is this guy? Who is Steven Lawson? Well, we know so far that he's the father of Joseph Lawson, but his name came up earlier during the original police interrogation of Brooks Houck. Someone called Brooks Houck late at night on July 3rd, and naturally, the police wanted to know why. Why is someone, that's such an important time. Why, Brooks, was someone calling you? And Brooks didn't recognize the number, so he said he typed it into his phone with the police, and a name popped up, Steven Lawson. So Brooks Houck, in the middle of his interrogation, right in the middle, says, okay, let's just call him, puts it on speakerphone, no coaching, no plan in advance. Well, maybe there was a plan in advance, no discussion of the plan in advance in front of the police, puts it right there and calls Steven Lawson, and they have a conversation in the middle of the interrogation in front of law enforcement, and it's captured on videotape. And that's what we're going to watch right now.
Okay, if we put that number in?
Yeah, go right ahead. Do what you got to do.
First of all, let me say thank you to Nicole Faulkner. I really appreciate it. And she has Are there specific requirements, she asked me, that would allow some indictments to be sealed versus public, or can they request anything to be sealed? I can't really answer that. It's probably specific to Kentucky. In general, there's a set of ground rules for when things can be sealed, and the court will consider those things. And it's the same general principles across cases. So probably that would be why. And I would guess the reason was that the state said, we're continuing with our investigation and we want to keep this under seal while we figure out who the other players are and while we arrest them. So thank you, Nicole, and thanks for the question.
Looks like you got a couple of messages. I don't know how to do that. I've got an Apple phone. So just
You just want to put the number in, right?
or check contacts or however you do it to see who it is. Yeah. Check this.
492-1390. Just call it. Oh, Steve Lawson.
Okay. Who is Steve Lawson?
He's somebody that works for me. Hey, Steve. Hey, I can't hear you real good. I'm gonna ask you to speak up a little bit, okay?
Okay, sir.
Hey, I was wanting to know. Hey, I've got some things going on next week. I'm gonna need your help with it. Are you already booked up, or can you help me?
I haven't moved up yet. I'm still looking for a place. That's why I needed them numbers from you.
All right. Well, I can write them all down and get them there for you. But I was actually talking about doing some more work with your little skid steer and so forth. Mine's still broke down.
Well, like I said, get with me tomorrow. I'm coming. I know you have a hard time hearing me because it's where I'm located at.
All right.
So just get in touch with me tomorrow and we'll see what we can do. But my question, I just want to tell you I'm sorry about everything that's going on in your life, brother, and I got you in my prayers.
I said it is a very difficult and trying time, but I appreciate you saying that. But hey, I need your help while I got you on the phone here. Do you remember the other night you called me really late, and I forgot what you asked me. Can you? I guess we wasn't on the phone. I might have been tired. I know it was pretty late at night. Can you remember what you asked me or what you were after? I can't remember.
Yes, sir, I can. I called to ask you for them numbers for a house.
Oh, for a rental house.
Yes, sir, I did.
And what did I forgot? What did I tell you?
You told me that you would call, what's her name, Katie or whatever, she handles all that.
Crystal.
Crystal, okay, I apologize.
Yeah.
And you said she handles all that, and that you would get back with me on it.
All right. Thank you so much now.
Hey, if there's anything I can do, you give me a call.
Thank you. You have a good night now.
Yes, sir. God bless you.
Thank you.
Okay. So that begs a question in my mind.
All right.
If she's in the truck next to you when he called, why would you need to call her about getting numbers for rental cars?
Because being that late at night, we're headed to the house. I just wouldn't. She normally's not going to deal with stuff that late. And I mean, I probably didn't even look at the phone to see who it was calling me. I'm sure I just answered it.
But he said you told him that you'd need to call her.
All right.
Why would you need to call her? I mean, that's an odd phrase for someone who's sitting next to you in the truck. Do you understand? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. But I mean, that's what if that right there is what I told him, that right there is what I told him. We wasn't on the phone that long, but normally I would just, she handles all that, and that's what I would do. She's not going to want to mess with that kind of stuff that late. I'm sure I probably tried to answer the phone really quickly, so that it wouldn't, a lot of times after I get moving, Eli goes to sleep, sometimes he goes to sleep in the truck, sometimes he doesn't. So if you want to call him, you got his number and everything, if you want to call him, you can call him.
What do you think happened?
I'm shocked. I do not know.
I mean, you told me that she doesn't do drugs.
She's not on any kind of drugs that I'm aware of.
She drinks socially. On
And
occasion.
mildly, yes, not any kind of.
Every 6-8 weeks, something like that, right? Has she ever had trouble with depression before?
Not really, not to my knowledge. I mean, there's always stress that's your highs and lows in people's life, but I wouldn't classify her as a stressful person or someone that's deeply depressed.
Well, I know Keith Rogers, her ex-husband, or still current, but not together. I know that he has had a drug problem in the past. Was she with him during the time that he had the drug problem, or was that after?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not.
you guys got together?
I
Was
mean,
she
I think
involved in that
I
at the
think
time?
that he has fought that for some time, and I think that she was obviously definitely in the picture while that was going on. But I don't. To my knowledge, she didn't get wrapped up into any of that.
One of the most bizarre things I can think of to happen during the middle of an interrogation, kind of the call a friend moment. You know, hey, I don't know the answer to your question. Do you mind if I use one of my lifelines and call a friend? It just is bizarre. But he by asking Stephen the question, he then had to accept whatever Stephen's answer was. And Stephen's answer was, you said to her, you said you would talk to her about it tomorrow, which then of course led to that really beautiful moment when the interrogation turns to, really? Well, she was sitting right next to you. Why are you doing that? So people were still reeling from the fact that there was this bombshell that a third person was now involved. And the question of, did Stephen turn his son Joseph in, or what was the order of all of this? How did it all happen? Is he the one helping the police? It did say he was cooperating. It said that specifically on, what was it, June 10th or 12th? And so just as everybody was dealing with that, boom, comes bombshell number 2. And this was from Steven Lawson's attorney. So let's go back to my sharing screen and let me show you the article that was published. Let me turn it off blue. This was published in one of the local newspapers, which, did I write down where it was? WDRB, and said there was solicitation. Attorney drops bombshell allegations in Crystal Rogers case. And there were 2 bombshell allegations here. Probably the biggest of all, that there was solicitation. Lots of questions around that. Solicitation by whom? Of whom? I mean, who's asking the question? Was it Steven Lawson being solicited by Brooks Houck to kill Crystal Rogers? What do they mean? That would probably be the most logical guess, but there's no actual information of that. Let's take a look at what the article said. This was the second piece of information. Joseph Lawson, the one who was arrested and who was the first person known to us to be arrested in this, drove Crystal's vehicle west on the Bluegrass Parkway to, I believe it was mile marker 14 or 16, where he had a flat tire. So according to Steven Lawson's attorney, it's Joey Lawson who abandoned her car on the side of the Bluegrass Parkway, who left the car there. That would make sense. There was some discussion about some of the dogs not alerting as if she had recently been in the car. So it's possible that definitely would make sense. And the attorney also said there likely is, for my knowledge of this case, evidence that there was solicitation. Wow. And he says, in my judgment, the Commonwealth is going to make a heavy effort to prove that. Truly, truly astonishing, brand new bombshell stuff. The idea, first of all, that there was solicitation. I got to use my special screen. That there was solicitation. In other words, that could even mean that Brooks Houck did not directly kill Crystal Rogers that someone else did. I guess it would be either Steven Lawson. They were both charged with conspiracy to commit murder. So I don't know. It's really hard to tell, but we have a whole lot of new questions. The one thing we do have is a statement that the state seems to be pursuing from one of the attorneys involved, the idea that there was solicitation, that someone tried to get someone else to murder Crystal Rogers. Then there's also the new evidence about who drove the car to the side of the road and left it there, and testimony, apparently, or at least a statement from Steven Lawson's attorney, that it was Steven Lawson's son who did that it was he who left the car there on the side of the road. So everybody is still reeling from both of those things when, boom, bombshell number 3 happens. And that is the fact that there was a brand new search, probably for the body of Crystal Rogers. At least that was the speculation. There was definite evidence that there was a heating up going on. And let's take a look at that. So at WHAS 11 reported the FBI searches Nelson County property for evidence in an unsolved Bardstown case. And the reason they have 3 pictures at the top, as you can see, it says Special Prosecutor Shane Young told WHAS 11 his office initiated this search in connection to one of 3 unsolved murders in Bardstown. And there were only 3. Ambush police officer Jason Ellis, missing mother of 5 Crystal Rogers, or her father, Tommy Ballard, who was shot and killed on a hunting trip. It wasn't even really a trip. He was still on his own property 1 year after Rogers' disappearance. Okay, the reason why that's so interesting is Tommy Ballard's body was found right there. Everybody knew he had been shot there, and there was a funeral. Jason Ellis, again, he had a funeral. People know where his body is. There's only one missing body, and that would be Crystal Rogers. Crystal Rogers has not been found. She simply disappeared. Of course, there's no evidence or statement by Shane Young that they are looking for a body. There's simply a statement that this was in connection to one of 3 unsolved murders. And I will say this, there's not been an announcement, and I checked as later this out in the sort of late afternoon today, there hasn't yet been any announcement that a body was found. And I feel like if they had found one, there would be an announcement of that, even if they were still doing testing and trying to confirm the name of the person, who the person was. If they found a body, I think we would have been told about that. But it certainly suggests somebody is cooperating, somebody is giving information to the police, which may or may not be accurate given that they haven't found a body, but that somebody is cooperating. The WHAS talked about heavy excavating equipment, dozens of personnel carrying tools, and they were going to a wooded area off Thompson Hill Road in Cox's Creek. So let's take a quick look. Let me show you. That is Thompson Hill Road, and we'll go into that a little bit more if there's any reason to do that. Right now you can see Thompson Hill Road is the red mark. Bardstown is almost straight south of that, and that is the town locally where these people lived or were near. All of the people in connection to this were around in this area. So meanwhile, the hits have absolutely kept coming for Brooks Houck. He filed 2 significant legal motions, and they went all the way to the Kentucky Supreme Court. And you may think, well, so what? Don't all cases do that? No, it's very rare to have even one issue of yours go all the way to the Supreme Court in any given case, much less 2. And the trial hasn't even started. This wasn't an appeal. It's just moved straight on. And so this went all the way to the Supreme Court, and Brooks Houck lost both. Number 1, a bond for $10 million was set for Brooks Houck. For him to get out, he would have to come up with cash of $10 million. He said, that's outrageous. It's unfair. It's way too high. But the trial court and then the Supreme Court said, that's not excessive. I mean, you own 83 properties. The tax assessment for those properties is $8.5 million. This is a murder case. You could have had your entire bail denied. That would be a possibility. So you got $10 million. Okay, you couldn't meet it. So what? That was all reasonable. Now, the second thing Houck wanted was far more controversial. He wanted the judge off the case. His primary argument was that a comment that the judge had made. And let me go ahead and say, if you've got questions, go ahead and put some of those in. I'm getting closer to the end, and so I'll take questions then. So the Brooks Houck team initially filed this request in the Supreme Court saying, this judge is really unfair. You need to kick him off the case. And the Supreme Court said, you need to start that in the trial court. You need to ask the trial court first. You don't start in the Supreme Court, which, of course, if you will recall, is exactly what also happened in the Delphi case. They started at the upper court. So the trial court refused to get off the case. Now, there's not at all a surprise in that. That's really what normally happens. It can be pretty deadly to file a motion to recuse the judge. They are essentially never granted. If the trial court doesn't grant it, it's just unheard of that the appellate court would reverse that. I'm not saying never, but practically never. And it will destroy any remaining goodwill that existed. It's in this particular case, they had a decent argument as these arguments go, but it's a hard situation anytime. What the trial court judge had said in another case, Brooks Houck had moved on to date yet another woman, also named Crystal, and she had a young child, and there was a question of custody between this new Crystal and her custody of the child versus her ex-husband. Now, the judge put this in a footnote in that, finally, this court is simply astonished that Crystal Maupin would want a relationship with a man who is the prime suspect in the disappearance and presumed death of his previous girlfriend. So Brooks Houck's team said, well, that shows you've already figured that Brooks Houck is charged and that he ought to be charged, that he did it. This shows that you prejudged the case. And the court said, look, the trial court, that was one sentence in a big long order that I wrote that was all about the custody. And besides that, ultimately he won, and I didn't keep the custody away from the mother because she was with Brooks. So you weren't prejudiced. Well, how does this show, the judge said, that I'm against you? That went back up to the Supreme Court, and I will show you what they did. It was pretty quick. Let me make that a little bigger so you can see. Upon review of the aforesaid affidavit, blah, 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 defendant has failed to demonstrate any disqualifying circumstance that would require the appointment of a special judge under the statute. The request is denied without prejudice of any party to seek appellate review after entry of a final judgment. What that means is a couple of things. One, it means that there's no real description of why they did it or why they made it. It's just what you gave us, that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough to prove that he couldn't be fair, that this judge couldn't be fair, couldn't correctly handle the case in a way that would meet your constitutional rights. And then secondly, you can appeal that. You can go all the way through trial and then appeal that, which isn't really much of an answer. If you truly believe that the person, the judge, is unfair to you, it won't really help you to be able to do that at the end of the case, because by then the trial is already over, the money's been spent, the jury has come back. So in truth, chances that that's going to be something that happens or a big issue by the time you get to the appeal and you finish the trial, really, really small. So essentially, that argument is over. That argument is over for Brooks Houck. So now we are about to have a really super awesome ending. So stay all the way to the end. Don't miss that. I'm telling you, you're going to really like it. I'll introduce it right before we do it. But we are about to debut memberships, and a key perk is going to be special emojis, but not just sort of any ordinary special emojis. No, these are special ones that Marlon has done for our channel. And he's done a video that kind of, you can watch him work on one of them and you see it change. It's really fascinating. You'll really like it. So we're going to debut that really soon. And you want to see that, we're going to do that. We're going to do that as our outro. So let me take a look and see if, first of all, I want to thank Nicole Faulkner again. I want to thank her for the super chat very much. Now let's see if there are some questions that got put in there. I'm looking for those question marks at the beginning so I can spot. Look how clear I was. No, oh, here we go. Maxine, is a conspiracy charge the same as premeditated? Well, it's not the same as a first degree murder charge, but in many states, maybe all, it is treated the same in terms of how it's treated for purposes of punishment and for purposes of a conviction. So it's hard to answer that exactly, but it's different. But in terms of how the final result, it would be pretty much the same in most cases anyway. So I must have missed something in the chat. You're going to eat scarves. What are y'all talking about? What is going on in the chat? It sounds like there's some crazy going on. Okay, Annie wants to know, why not deny bail for Houck? Are these men turning on one another, hiding her body, hired to help kill to get better deals? So why not deny bail? I imagine he just wanted to, I mean, I can't honestly, Annie K, I can't truthfully answer why he decided not to just deny bail. Why make it $10 million? Because in practical terms, it was pretty much the same thing. $10 million, I assume even he didn't have, even though he was pretty wealthy. But maybe the judge thought he maybe could really raise that, but it would make him think very hard about running. I don't know. I think it may just have been a way to essentially keep him in jail while still providing a possible out. Are these men turning on one another? It sounds like it to me. There's not definite proof of that yet. We have a lot left to learn. That's one of the reasons why I think this case is going to be so big in 2024, is because there's so little. It's like we're just scratching the surface of what clearly is a pretty big conspiracy. We haven't even talked about yet Nick Houck, the brother of Brooks Houck, who was a police officer at the time, who was fired. There's quite the interrogation of him, and there's a confrontation between him and the FBI officer after he failed a lie detector test. And he is accused of selling the gun that killed Tommy Ballard. That was stated in open court, but no charges around any of that yet. Wow, there's a whole nother side of things. So that'll be something that will follow. And then the entire Houck family, according to the prosecutor stating in open court, did recordings of the grand jury, which would be highly improper. So will there be charges around that? It's going to have a lot of tentacles coming out. I think it's going to be a really big, a talked about case for 2024. I think it's going to be one of the ones that everybody's talking about. And let's see. Okay, I think I'm pretty much answering the questions. Hopefully, good. Yay. Okay. So I want to thank the moderators. I want to thank Mama Pinks. I want to thank Marlon. I appreciate your doing this. And let's have our outro. You can watch Marlon make one of the emojis for our upcoming memberships.